The bird sings, the wind blows, the summer sky, accompanied by the splendid sun, soon brings forth the heat. Enkrid felt the heat both outside and within. For the past 3 months, rumors had spread of peace on the surface and war brewing in the background. In the end, Aspen took a step back. There was no war, no battle. So, what would those left in the barracks do? Training and rest were all there was. Many went on assignments through the mercenary system. Enkrid had no shortage of krona. His 2 swords were in good condition. Kreis consistently handed over the krona earned through the guild. Thus, most of his time was spent on training. Despite that, progress was slow, at least it seemed so in the eyes of others. The word stagnation was often mentioned. Stagnation means stopping. Everyone thought Enkrid was stagnant, but he himself thought differently. Why wouldn't he?
Will.
What had been Enkrid's dream until now? It was a ghost he couldn't grasp. It was an unseen darkness because he couldn't catch or see it. It was a sky he couldn't reach. He saw, heard, and created the stairs leading to that sky. These are called milestones. For Enkrid, will was such a thing. It was a stairway and a milestone. The same goes for the words to break his limits. Stagnation? No. Because his former self and his current self were utterly different, he was not stagnant. Even if it appeared stagnant to others, Enkrid could see the results of his growth. What was the reason he could become like this? It was thanks to what he had ingrained and practiced all this time. Starting with the heart of the beast, the sense of the blade, focus point, and the isolation technique.
If there's a foundation in swordsmanship.
Could there be a foundation in creating talent as well? He didn't know. But wasn't that exactly what was happening in his body right now? Through focus point, sometimes using the heart of the beast, or sometimes sharpening the edge of his senses, he revisited and revisited his experiences. For the past 3 months, that was what Enkrid did. There were soldiers seeking him. He felt the reality of the saying that one improves by learning.
Let's have a match.
First Company, Border Patrol. Both units were among the skilled groups within the Border Guard Reserve Unit. At first, even ordinary soldiers often came. Now, unless they were from this unit, no one came. Sparring was always welcome.
Sure.
Enkrid greeted them calmly. Soon 2 men were sweating as they exchanged their skills. Enkrid won every time. What had changed from before was that now he fought without using grappling techniques, focusing instead on basic skills, excluding the Valen mercenary sword technique. That was enough. When fighting with Rem and the other platoon members, he used everything he had, but not with these soldiers. There was no need. From what he had learned, sometimes he saw soldiers who struggled, those who, while trying to learn and master various things at once, lost focus on the basics.
It's efficient, isn't it? This is.
They would often respond this way when he pointed out the issues. He had thought the same thing before. An efficient and rational combat method. He still used it a lot, but that was a combat method, not a training method. For today's repetition, he had tried to learn and internalize as much as possible. So, did anything come easily? Even now, he couldn't use the sense of evasion properly. The heart of the beast required preparation time. Even focus point was difficult to activate unless his life was on the line. It was a realization he came to after countless thoughts and deliberations.
Start with what I can do now.
He moved forward and moved forward again. With that mindset, he continued the endless repetition. Sometimes a ferryman appeared in his dreams asking,
"What kind of person are you?"
For 3 months it was just training. As in Enkrid's life, this time was no different, repeating and repeating, living a week like today, a month like today. Through this, he realized something new.
Rhythm.
It's something necessary when swinging a sword. For geniuses, like Ragnar, things that passed by quickly were, for Enkrid, stepping stones to be carefully considered and climbed, step by step. When he realized something in the morning, he felt like he was flying all day. If he realized it in the evening, he felt joyful even until bedtime. Ka'a. Esther followed Enkrid as if cheering for him. Esther, who used to cling to him even at night, now stuck close even during the day.
You're popular even with animals.
Frog said this much. Esther raised her claws towards Frog but never actually fought with him. Every other day, the ferry company commander visited.
Would autumn be a good time for the engagement?
She would joke.
Shall we spar?
She would leave after exchanging swords. The fairy's sword was sharp and light, teaching him new things, teaching and learning, learning through sparring.
Come on, block this.
Rem's axe swing was still fierce and rough, but there was something different from before. A slight smile appeared on their faces.
Eek.
Sometimes it was surprising. The sword swung upward from below, while the left hand's sword thrust in an offbeat manner. The timing of the slash and thrust was subtly different, causing a dissonance in the rhythm. Both hands moved to different rhythms simultaneously. This was the Valen mercenary sword technique, known as the crossed blades. The illusion of swords, a technique often considered underhanded even among the Valen mercenary sword techniques, was rarely genuine. It created the appearance that the sword in the right hand and the sword in the left were moving independently.
That was quite good just now.
Rem said recognition, and it was a joy.
If you neglect martial arts, the Lord will be angry.
No, learning Valaf-style martial arts doesn't involve any divine wrath. Though it was nonsense, Enkrid mingled with Auden without a word. Valaf-style martial arts combined striking and grappling techniques. Didn't Enkrid mix grappling techniques into the Valen mercenary sword technique brawl to kill Mitch Hurrier? He learned and acquired knowledge. It was the joy of learning, receiving recognition, learning, and in turn, teaching others. That's how one grows. The joy of growth spurred him on. Swinging his sword became an enjoyment.
Step by step, even if it's just half a step, even if it's crawling.
It was the beginner's mindset, just as he had intended from the beginning. What seemed so easy for Enkrid, it was something quite extraordinary to someone else, especially for Frog, who was watching. Of course, Enkrid was more focused on reflecting on himself today rather than the eyes around him. In between, he diligently worked on honing his dynamic vision and sensory training, living busily more than anyone else. Only a few of the soldiers who initially followed Enkrid into repeated training remained committed to the training, whether it was due to the lack of discipline after the battle or if it was just human nature. As more soldiers idled around, fewer remained dedicated to training, yet there were still those who stayed. Some stood out. Excluding these, the best sparring partners were the border patrol. Sometimes he would even visit them to spar with swords. Always welcome. The captain of the patrol always welcomed Enkrid. He sparred with him and mingled with others, but Torres, who was familiar to him, shook his head.
I'm not fighting you anymore.
Why, hey, it's no good fighting a losing battle.
The soldier ranking system. This is what people talk about when discussing elitist soldiers. Among them, some rekindled their competitive spirit, but Enkrid had already gone a step further than them. 3 months. Time always felt like an arrow shot forward. But for Enkrid it was a day. It was today. It was a process of moving towards tomorrow.
Rhythm isn't just one thing. Didn't you already know that?
Perhaps they thought it couldn't be understood just by watching. Or maybe they were getting bored of staying here. Frog and Luagarne also started teaching Enkrid.
I was just about to say that.
Ragna, who was watching, muttered, but it was exactly the right thing to say at that moment. Rhythm. Timing. That's right. It doesn't have to be just one. Hadn't he already learned that through the Valen mercenary sword technique? The crossed blades technique was a dual attack that used offbeat timing. There were long, drawn-out rhythms in a single breath. There were also short and firm rhythms. And there were rhythms where one had to endure while keeping their core tight. That's how he learned.
Change the timing from regular to irregular, and do that in one step. No, right now, take your left foot half a step forward. Then you can do the middle cut spinning slash.
Luagern was quite enthusiastic. Why did Frog stay by his side? Why was he staying here, eating and sleeping in this place? Why was he teaching him? He set aside all these questions. Or rather, he decided to forget them. If they teach, he learns. Always eager to learn, Enkrid did just that.
Then, what if I pull my right foot back from here? That makes it difficult to recover your sword. In that case, do it like this instead.
Ragna also stepped in. It was unclear how things had come to be this way, but everyone seemed more enthusiastic than before.
No, you can do it like this too.
Rem joined in. It was a step where he twisted his body and maintained balance on his toes. The sword swung according to the situation, the feet moved, and the eyes reacted.
Broaden your senses. Haven't you already learned this?
Jackson's advice interjected. That's right, he had already learned. Hadn't he expanded his sensory range while facing lycanthropes? Instead of just looking forward, he saw everything. He spread his senses outward, centering on himself.
Platoon leader, every movement has a center. It's the same in both martial arts and swordsmanship. It's important to find the center line and connect it to your opponent.
Auden's teaching added to this. Everyone had become more passionate than before. For Enkrid, all of this brought joy.
There is an advantage.
This was Frog's conclusion after observing everything.
What advantage?
Rem stood beside him and asked. They were still in the training ground, under the hot sun, sweating and smelling the stench of sweat on this very day.
Once he learns something, he doesn't let it go.
Rem nodded. It was true. Enkrid was a slow learner. There were even rumors calling him a late-blooming genius.
I'm not sure about that.
But one thing was certain. He never forgot what he learned. He endlessly pondered. He always wanted to learn, somehow. How to apply what he learned, how to implement it, in what way to use it, he pondered endlessly. It was visible. That was also an advantage. Rem thought, and Frog, by this point, was reflecting on what exactly he was doing.
Is it his face that's captivating?
Or maybe it was his nature. Teaching someone who doesn't show talent and paving the way for them, how inefficient. But he didn't mind. Frog was driven by desires and ambitions. Luagern also knew he couldn't be free from such things. Of course, there were things beyond desire. Specifically, to avoid being overly controlled by desire, he made a covenant. A covenant was a promise, a vow that had to be kept, and for Frog, it was binding.
I need to return eventually.
Frog thought this but continued teaching Enkrid. Despite learning and practicing diligently for 3 months, progress seemed slow, at least to Frog. Between Frog's observations and the platoon members' teachings, Enkrid was reviewing the rhythm and re-embedded various techniques into his body. It felt like nearing perfection, or rather, approaching the limits. Of course, in reality, that was far from the truth, but since he didn't even understand what reaching his limits meant, it felt like that. During this time,
You're being called.
the ferry company commander came to fetch him.
Yes.
Enkrid, drenched in sweat, followed her. Sweat also beaded on the ferry company commander's forehead. It was that hot of a day. The humidity was high. It seemed like it might rain soon. Based on experience, it would probably rain within a day or two.
You're here?
The place they were called to was the battalion commander's office.
There's a request. What do you think?
The mercenary system allowed soldiers to take on requests voluntarily, but sometimes orders came from above. It was rare, but when a few regular soldiers couldn't handle a situation, a platoon or company-level force would be dispatched. According to Kreis, there had been disturbances caused by monsters and beasts within the kingdom recently. There was always a tendency for such disturbances to increase as summer approached, but this year seemed particularly bad.
The summer heat promotes the proliferation of monsters and beasts.
This was a well-known saying on the continent. This was one of those situations.
We'd like to give you temporary command of a nearby pioneer village to handle the situation.
The battalion commander said. Because the spring battlefield had ended early this summer, they were spending time in the city rather than on the battlefield, which was rare. During this time, Enkrid had stayed only in the training grounds and the barracks. He hadn't even gone to the market once. It was because he was engrossed in the joy of progressing on his path with the sword.
If you don't want to go, you can decline, and if you need time, you can think it over and let me know.
The battalion commander looked somewhat fatigued. Did he have a lot of work to handle? Perhaps he hadn't slept well, but it seemed more likely that he was just overworked. The abundance of documents around him suggested as much.
Yes, sir.
Enkrid saluted and turned to leave. As he stepped outside, the ferry company commander looked at him with a peculiar expression.
Why are you looking at me like that?
Would she make another offhand comment?
I just realized I might have chosen the right man.
Of course, it was a typical fairy-style joke.
Is that so?
After the casual joke, Enkrid returned to the barracks, where Kreis, who had been particularly busy lately, was inside. When he briefly explained the situation and showed the orders,
We're definitely going! We have to go! It's an order!
Kreis said with bright eyes. At times like this, it meant there was Krona involved. Kreis's reaction suggested that. The order contained the location of the village and a rough estimate of the colony's size. It mentioned disturbances caused by a group of monsters. Upon seeing the location and ignoring the monster group, Kreis's eyes lit up.
Monsters, you said you dreamed of being a knight, right? Then we have to go, obvious. Isn't slaying monsters what knights do?
Kreis believed that slaying monsters was the essence of being a knight. However, those who heard his words interpreted them differently. It sounded as though he was belittling knights, treating a weapon capable of changing the tide of battle as merely a monster hunter.
And isn't it our duty to save the villagers? My sense of justice is boiling over.
His tone, which should have been filled with concern, seemed rather greedy. It was as if his eyes had turned into gold coins. Everyone looked at Kreis, thinking similar thoughts. But Kreis didn't care about others' opinions. He was entirely focused on Enkrid. What mattered was the decision-maker, not the opinions of others.
What is it?
Enkrid asked, crossing his arms.
Big Eyes here, always wanting to go somewhere.
Rem, who had been lounging half-reclined on a bed, remarked. Quite perceptive, Kreis thought, and looked at the leader with his trump card, wide, bright eyes. Yes, aren't my eyes big? Look into my eyes now, you want to take on this mission. His eyes were so clear and large that they seemed to have a hypnotic effect. Enkrid hesitated, then spoke.
Should I spit on you? Where did you get those eyes from?
Kreis read Enkrid's expression.
This isn't working. It's not convincing him.
So, what's the next step? Kreis pondered, then quickly gave up. He was clever, quick-witted, and perceptive. Kreis attributed these traits to his hard childhood experiences. It was thanks to that hardship.
These tricks don't work on the leader.
He sensed it. This wouldn't work. So, a direct approach. Always straightforward and direct. The leader always treated him and others that way, so he decided to do the same. Kreis had exceptional intuition. He quickly adjusted his approach, like a meteor falling swiftly.
So about 100 years ago, there was a merchant named Dolph, renowned across the continent.
He began the story with a historical anecdote. The priority was to capture interest. Should it be called the eccentric hobby of a wealthy man? Or perhaps an odd quirk? One of Dolph's hobbies was to hide a portion of his wealth and make treasure maps. This is a legend found in old historical records.
But did it end as just a legend? No, otherwise why would I bring it up?
Kreis's tone became more forceful at key moments. He could be described as a persuasive storyteller. His words carried a sense of fervor. Dolph was said to have been the owner of a once famous merchant guild, but shortly before he died, he siphoned off all his wealth and hid it. Naturally, those who should have inherited it were furious. Even his 6 wives were breathing fire.
Why did you do that?
It said Dolph didn't answer. He silently endured their criticism. He only said,
If you want my wealth, find the map.
The legend conveyed that Dolph said this. The last record in the legend was that a chronicler asked Dolph, the merchant, before he died.
Why did you make such maps?
Dolph's answer was a masterpiece.
Because it's fun.
There were over 20 maps filled with codes. The one who deciphered the first map obtained the treasure. It was a man who had been Dolph's coachman. The man became a rich merchant, but later went bankrupt after establishing a merchant guild. The one who deciphered the second map was Dolph's first wife. She was greedy. She kept it a secret from her son and went alone to the place her husband had created, only to fall into a trap and die. Indeed, the coachman was a decoy. He was Dolph's final ploy. Contrary to what the legend said, Dolph didn't want his wealth to fall into anyone's hands. He particularly despised the idea of giving anything to his family.
In reality, he was a fruitless tree, a bee that couldn't collect nectar.
Everyone had started listening to Kreis. His storytelling skill was enough to rival that of a skilled bard. Yes, Dolph was incapable of having children, yet he had 6 wives and over 20 children. It didn't make sense. So, he planned his revenge. He hid all his wealth in various places. A few of them had already been unearthed by a friend named Kurgan, the continent's greatest treasure hunter. Treasure hunter Kurgan had already proven it.
The treasure is real.
It was a hidden story of history. Kreis knew quite a bit about this subject. Why wouldn't he, when it was related to Krona? There were widespread rumors that if you found and dug up this map, real treasure would be hidden there, and treasure hunter Kurgan had proven it. But, what luck! Surely, the goddess of luck had kissed his cheek while he was asleep. During the last battle, when Kreis scouted the enemy camp, he managed to grab a few items. One of them was an item he retrieved from under a tree. The map smelled foul, as if it had been kept between someone's legs. He wanted to throw it away immediately, but Kreis instinctively knew it wasn't an ordinary item, so he kept it. Treasure maps were common items that circulated widely. There were a lot of fakes. There was someone in the Gilpin Guild who appraised such things. In polite terms, an appraiser. In back alley slang, a fence. You needed an eye for treasures to sell them.
This looks genuine.
One word from him was enough. It was 100 years old. The language was different, so the appraiser couldn't recognize it. Kreis hadn't recognized the ancient text either. He struggled to decipher it, but unexpectedly, the solution came from Frog. Luagarn called himself
I am a scholar.
Frog? Despite his thoughts, Kreis didn't give Frog a disrespectful look. Instead, he asked Frog to help decipher a few random characters, and from that, Kreis pieced together the answer. It was Dolph's 6th map.
There will be treasure, enormous treasure.
Kreis passionately spoke in the middle of the lodging. His face was red from lack of oxygen, as he hadn't paused to breathe.
It's so old that none of the traps will work properly. It's like picking up jewels that have fallen on the road. Just dust off the dirt and take them.
The story was quite interesting, but Enkrid was not swayed by Kreis's enthusiasm. He didn't commit to going to the location marked on the treasure map. He just thought,
Since we're leaving anyway.
whether it was monsters, beasts, or war, he was itching to test himself, to see if what he had learned, if the skills and lessons acquired through training and sparring with everyone were guiding him in the right direction. The desire to confirm one's abilities is a basic human instinct.
Request accepted.
Kreis was delighted at Enkrid's words.
But visiting that place is uncertain.
Kreis looked visibly disappointed at the follow-up statement. He widened his eyes and muttered.
How could you?
Rem, seeing this, laughed from the side. Enkrid didn't know, but ever since Kreis realized the map was real, he had been plotting to capitalize on it. Going to find the treasure alone? That would be like offering his flesh and blood to the monsters as bread and wine. Then, with the guild members, that would be a banquet prepared with his and the guild members' flesh and blood. He needed a group that was skilled enough not to be bothered by the threat of monsters, beasts, or bandits. Hiring mercenaries? That would require at least a squad's worth, making it too costly. So his first target was Rem.
Why don't you take a request?
I only take assassination requests. The targets are limited to 3. A sly wildcat, a lazy glutton, and a religious fanatic.
Rem had no intention of listening. Would Ragna and Jackson be any different? He didn't even try with Auden. He didn't frequent battlefields often, so treasure hunting was out of the question.
If Big Eyes vows to offer everything to God.
That's what he'd say. Asking the platoon leader for help was out, since he had been swinging his sword like a madman for the past 3 months. It was hard to even approach him.
I would even borrow your hands.
He didn't dare ask Esther.
Roar!
Esther expressed displeasure with her whole body. Any closer, and she would scratch with her claws again. Ever since the day he first met Esther and tried to find out her gender by touching her, Esther had hated him. No, she despised him. Even though she was a spiritual beast, it was surprising how a panther could express such emotions. He was about to give up halfway. No matter how much he liked Krona, he wouldn't risk his life. That was Kreis's philosophy. His dream was to open a salon and live without worrying about Krona, right in the middle of a safe city, enjoying the nightlife moderately. Of course, running a salon wasn't without risk, but it was the kind of thrill that made life enjoyable. Anyway, he was halfway to giving up, but if the platoon leader decided to go, recently how strong was Enkrid?
It's no use, even I can't beat him.
This was the official statement from the Border Patrol commander.
If you give me 5 sharpshooters and 2 wizards, it might be doable.
This was Torres, the platoon leader's statement. With 5 sharpshooters and 2 wizards, even Kreis might have a chance against Enkrid. Even without himself, the others alone would be sufficient, right?
It's getting interesting.
Rem also acknowledged this.
I'm intrigued.
This was a phrase frequently used by the ferry company commander. What does all this mean? It suggests that not even a group of ghouls could touch the leader's clothes, doesn't it? Perhaps our platoon leader is truly a genius. There was no doubt. He had already seen him fight Frog firsthand, so...
Ah, come on, let's go, just go.
Kreis pleaded. Enkrid ignored him.
I'll go too.
Meanwhile, Frog joined the conversation.
Great, that's good.
Kreis was pleased.
Shall I join as well?
Finn also raised her hand. She was a ranger, and a very skilled one at that. Not quite at the level of a pathfinder who could create walking maps, but she was good at finding her way and fighting.
Good!
Kreis spoke up again. Enkrid smirked at the sight. There was no need to stop the two. The request had reached them because the battalion commander had specifically pointed it out.
A dangerous task.
His heart was racing, and he had agreed because it was such a task. But reducing risk was the smart move, so the more people, the better. A colony of monsters, protecting the pioneer village, with temporary command and Frog as part of the team. What if they brought Rem or another member?
Want to come along?
Enkrid asked, not entirely without thought, as he somewhat hoped they would join.
Don't you know I'm busy?
Rem, who had already wrapped himself in a blanket on the bed, lazily replied, making Enkrid think.
That's so like Rem.
Busy doing nothing but lounging around. Then Enkrid thought of bringing Ragna along and asked,
Not interested.
Not interested? Want to laze around? Feeling short on laziness lately? Ragna was also stuck to his bed. He didn't even turn his head when he replied.
The Lord hasn't given me any guidance.
Audin also declined. Jackson was nowhere to be seen. It was said he was diligently on duty, but he didn't seem to have time to drop by the barracks. In the end, it meant no one else was coming along. Enkrid didn't mind. In reality, if there were a significant threat, they would send the troops. Would they specifically choose him for such a mission? He thought not. The mission was to check on the colony of monsters near the pioneer village and, if possible, eliminate them. The order stated that he would have command over the village's forces.
If there's a village militia.
They probably wouldn't be short on numbers, so the only thing left was to prepare thoroughly for the journey. This world is not kind to travelers, so it was right to avoid setting out without adequate preparation. Normally, even a group of 4 leaving might raise eyebrows, but with a ranger and Frog among them, it was different. Moreover, the leader was a swordsman of an elite level, comparable to top-tier soldiers in Naurilia's military ranking system. They were not a group that could easily be threatened. Despite a world teeming with bandits and monsters, they had more than enough strength. So, it didn't matter if no other platoon members came along.
We depart in 2 weeks.
Enkrid announced, and Kreis, still anxious, asked,
Is there really no chance?
We'll see.
Enkrid was always sincere. Given the uncertainty of their mission, they had to assess the situation as they went. Kreis could only hope. The treasure cave he found was in that area, just a day's journey from the pioneer village.
Good, great!
Kreis realized that pressing further was pointless. So, the group began their preparations. Traveling in this world was truly challenging. In a world where even merchants traveling between cities moved in groups of at least 10 to maintain safety. Mercenaries and the military mercenary system of Naurilia were highly regarded. Despite this, only 4 of them were setting out. There were no concerns, but that didn't mean they could afford to be careless in their preparations. Enkrid decided to go into the village for the first time in a while. There were a few items he needed to procure from the market. Aspen had been defeated, but it hadn't collapsed. Winning and losing are things that happen repeatedly. No matter how thoroughly you prepare, problems arise. Defeat was just a problem to be endured.
We can lose.
That's what Avner, the genius strategist of Aspen, thought. But to lose like this? All the preparations had been thwarted. The strategies carefully laid out were nullified from the start. Even though it was a retreating battlefield, to be contradicted like this? Avner, Aspen's genius strategist, was quite confident. Even if it wasn't a perfect victory, he thought they wouldn't be easily pushed back. He had more than 1 or 2 plans. They had brought in a giant. They had hidden their full strength. They had even led the enemy into complacency and provided an overall strategy. The strategy's essence was this: to win in the detour battle and split Naurilia's main force. That was the basic plan, to divide their main forces, but it went wrong from the start. The defeat in a battle they couldn't afford to lose was the beginning of all the chaos. It was like one bookshelf toppling over and causing a domino effect.
But I will keep moving.
It was absurd, so much so that he spoke to himself. Avner ran his hand through his green hair. In the bright sunlight, he saw a child playing outside the window. A few attendants were trailing after the child. The child waved toward the window. Avner leaned against the windowsill with the window open. After waving back at the child, he enjoyed the sunshine. It was a good day. The season was warming up. He saw the child climb onto a swing hanging outside. While watching the child, he mulled over the beginning of the operation. That's what Avner did.
Why?
Why did they lose? The defeat of the entire battlefield began with the detour. Several documents crossed his mind. He needed to trace back to find the cause of the defeat, going back to the beginning, the very start.
It started with the soldier duel.
That was the beginning of the block, after which Mitch Hurrier died. In the end, there were unexpected displays of force in the detour battle. Who was at the center of that? There was a name in the report Avner received. It was the last information sent by a friendly commander before dying, the Madman platoon leader Enkrid. The name wasn't unfamiliar, and as he recalled, he was someone for whom an assassin was sent by the Hurrier family. Just a platoon leader? Could such a person be the beginning of all these conflicts? He didn't know. From now on, it was purely instinct, the instinct of a strategist and a military man.
It won't be a loss.
When the Hurrier family sent assassins, it seemed like a useless act, but it might have been the right move. Avner decided to use an assassin for the future, specifically for the next war after the peace. He still aimed to kill just one platoon leader. Since there was a well-established guild operating in Aspen, using them would ensure they wouldn't be traced back. After organizing his thoughts, he moved. He stepped away from the windowsill, immediately ordered the summoning of the Assassination Guild, and placed a request in the name of the royal palace.
If they cross the border, the reward will be triple, and they will reject unreasonable requests.
In response to the Assassination Guild, Avner sent his reply. A note with Krona written on it would suffice.
Just a platoon leader. For just one, are you using this much Krona?
It was enough to buy a mansion in the capital of the Aspen Duchy. The Assassination Guild had no reason to refuse. It wasn't like they were asked to kill a well-known noble or target a key military figure. Just one platoon leader, crossing the border being the only risk. The Assassination Guild accepted the request and moved. They selected 3 assassins and sent them.
Failure.
The guild leader realized he had underestimated the situation.
Send intermediate assassins.
Thinking back, hadn't the Half-Blood Fairy failed previously? He was intermediate level too. Well, that's why they sent 3 assassins.
Send 2 more.
Those were the assassins sent.
Boss, another failure?
No, this is strange. Why do they keep dying?
2 intermediate assassins? Yes.
What's going on? Maybe they need to send a higher-ranked assassin. At this point, they needed to consider the cost.
Send a higher-ranked assassin.
They get the job done. Above all, it was a direct order from the royal palace. Although they operated publicly as an assassination guild, fundamentally, the guild known as Montaire's Swamps was owned by the royal palace. The guild leader knew this well. If they went against the royal palace, making a living through assassination would be impossible. So, a higher-ranked assassin was sent.
What is this?
One of the top 10 assassins in Montaire's Swamp failed. There was no contact, unless a kind wizard suddenly appeared and removed the curse marks engraved on their bodies. They must be dead. Sure enough, 2 days later, the assassin's head was delivered to the secret mansion Montaire's Swamp had hidden.
Inform the palace.
Proceeding further would result in severe losses. There was something on the other side. A higher-ranked assassin wasn't just captured but beheaded, and they revealed their location. There was an involvement of a superior group.
That's my judgment.
The guild leader entered the palace. He told them everything that happened. He conveyed that it was impossible to proceed further. Avner smirked inwardly.
The Assassination Guild failed.
It was absurd for him as well. They had no capacity or time to intervene further.
Let's leave it at that.
Avner gave up. There was too much going on internally in Aspen to focus more on this. If there was something about that person, if there really was something.
We'll meet again.
Avner left the name Enkrid behind. If they were destined to meet on the battlefield, then so be it. It meant that Enkrid was not someone who could be ended by assassination. A shadow had been lurking around the barracks for several days. The movements were familiar, making it difficult for a casual observer to guess it was the same person. Facing him, Jackson held his breath and quieted his footsteps. He perfectly silenced any trace of his presence to confuse the assassin.
What is this?
He recognized the assassin immediately. They were in the same line of work. Jackson unraveled a thin cord from his hand. It was thick and coated with black ink and a special oil to prevent light reflection. It wrapped around the assassin's neck. Before the assassin could react, Jackson pulled the cord. With the force from a jab to the back with his elbow, he snapped the neck halfway. There was a soft snap as the head tilted to the side. Breaking the neck meant death. It was a simple fact. Jackson inspected the dead assassin. Had it not been him, this would have been a difficult opponent. Jackson was not a combatant, but an intelligence agent for the border guard. That didn't mean he would be caught off guard, though.
The third one.
3 attacks had occurred in the 3 months since the battle ended. The third attack involved someone who had deliberately stayed close to the barracks wall. This individual had spent 3 days in various disguises: beggar, old man, merchant, each time appearing differently.
A pretty skilled guy.
Such people had entered the city where Jackson was staying. It seemed their target was inside the barracks. If they were targeting a company commander, battalion commander, or a noble, they would have approached differently. The first ones came disguised as new recruits. Their target was too obvious.
The Madman platoon.
Following the trail, the target became clear. It was the platoon leader. They were targeting Enkrid. But since Enkrid hadn't left the barracks or training grounds for 3 months, they tried to infiltrate.
Crazy bastards.
Putting in this much effort to kill just one platoon leader. Jackson moved quietly, avoiding the eyes of others, with the corpse slung over his shoulder to a side alley where vagrants stayed. He laid the body down. He posed the body as if it were sleeping and bought a bottle of liquor, pouring it around and leaving it next to the corpse. This way, people would likely just think it was a dead vagrant and not look for any signs of foul play. After dealing with the body, Jackson entered the red light district. He was a regular there. As he arrived, a few of the women glanced at him. Such a striking appearance wasn't common. Ignoring the stares, Jackson went into a room where a young blonde woman greeted him half-naked. Jackson gestured with a few fingers, using sign language to convey his message. The woman spoke.
No one's listening. Any problems? No more problems.
Previously, they had missed the half-blood fairy assassin entering the city. Even if they hadn't blanketed the entire city with watchers, this seemed implausible. Jackson was bothered by it. His pride was wounded. After that, more assassins had come, and he had killed each one. As long as he was with the border guard, no other assassins or similar characters would get in. It wasn't just because someone was targeting the platoon leader. Absolutely not. Jackson leaned against the door, expressionless as usual. The woman, observing his expression, continued.
They're from Montaire's swamp. What should we do?
Montaire's swamp was an assassination guild based in Aspen.
Let them know this is my territory, our way.
The message was clear. Kill anyone who crossed the line. The woman nodded. It might lead to a guild war, but it would likely be an unseen war. Her organization was originally such a place. Afterward, Jackson spent the night with her. Their relationship was both professional and physical. They were close to being lovers. The woman woke early and had a few subordinates cut off the head of the corpse Jackson had killed. She sent it to one of Montaire's swamp's bases. It was a warning. If they ignored the warning, the consequences were their own. After that, Montaire's swamp made no further attempts, for good reason. If they operated in Aspen, this side operated across the continent.
Is this the right way?
Christ looked around the gloomy alley and asked, noticing the foul smell and the filthy, uninviting ground. It was an alley near where vagrants stayed. Christ's question was directed at Jackson. Enkrid also glanced around. While procuring various items, Enkrid had asked if they could find a whistle dagger.
We can find it.
Jackson had said, and he had told them to follow. That's how they ended up here. Lately, they had been so busy that finding time for this seemed unlikely. Jackson had been spending time in the red light district and various other places, rarely coming to the barracks. Jackson didn't respond to Christ's question, thinking it wasn't worth his time. It was typical of Jackson to remain silent when he thought something had no value. His silence indicated that this was the right place. Sometimes silence serves as an answer. Though Christ had asked, he didn't push further. It wasn't as if they couldn't enter just because it was a bit dirty.
This way.
Jackson spoke indifferently and led the way inside. Enkrid followed him. They had been looking for a blacksmith, preferably a skilled one. They already knew that there was no answer from that side. Christ had already done enough research to know. Following Enkrid, Frog also came along. For some reason, Esther had joined them as well. As they entered the garbage-filled alley, Esther climbed up the wall and walked along the rooftops.
That's some witchcraft.
Luagar commented upon seeing this. Enkrid half agreed, thinking she didn't seem entirely human. Luagar wore boots designed for frog, featuring a unique design with 8 tight straps over the instep and a sturdy wooden sole. With every step she took, a clacking sound was made by the contact between the cobblestone and her shoes.
Here we are.
Jackson stopped and spoke. There were many items to prepare for the journey, especially for the mission, and Enkrid wanted to stock up on whistle daggers.
Quite a few customers today.
An old woman who had laid out a stall right in front of an open door spoke. She had crystal balls, faded curly blonde hair, wrinkled hands, and the appearance of a fortune teller.
Is it really here?
Enkrid had experienced various things. An underground market? He had seen quite a few. During his mercenary days, he had even seen illegal slave markets that operated secretly. An underground market, and now a fortune teller? Whistle daggers were hard to find. They were rare even in underground markets. Could such a weapon be with a fortune teller?
Yes.
Jackson replied and gestured with his hands using sign language. Enkrid didn't understand the meaning of the signs, but the old fortune teller let out a nasal sound, which seemed to be a sign of permission.
Looking for something specific?
The fortune teller asked.
Whistle daggers, as many as possible.
Enkrid answered.
And the payment?
This guy will handle it.
Enkrid indicated Kreis.
Yes, I'll pay.
Kreis reluctantly stepped forward, though outwardly he appeared quite willing. If he had to spend money, he might as well spend it properly. Investing is the way to make a profit, after all.
Shall I send it to the unit?
Do you know who I am?
Enkrid responded with a question, and the old fortune teller chuckled.
In this city, even if they don't know the name of the battalion commander, there's no one who doesn't know your name.
What did that mean? Enkrid wanted to ask more, but the fortune teller started packing up her crystal ball and tools.
Well then, goodbye.
As the old woman went into her house, Enkrid wondered if he should ask her something else. She packed her things with a practiced hand, taking only a few moments to clear the stall. Enkrid sometimes wondered, how did Jackson know places like this? Even Kreis had given up on finding these items, but Enkrid didn't ask how he knew. The goal was the whistle daggers, not Jackson's past.
Do you really think she'll get them? It doesn't seem trustworthy.
Kreis muttered beside him, naturally suspicious.
If she doesn't, then so be it.
Enkrid said as he walked away, thinking of picking up a few things from the market since they were already out. For instance, visiting a jerky shop known for its excellent seasoning and stopping by a blacksmith to check his armor. It was too hot to wear a gambesons, but he couldn't go without some protection. He considered getting a loose-fitting leather armor. He had thrown away his old leather armor. One day, Esther had shredded it with her claws.
Maybe you should pay for new armor by selling your claws.
Enkrid joked to Esther, who was walking on the roof.
Kerr.
The panther let out a low growl. It sounded like she was saying,
Don't be ridiculous.
Enkrid had meant it as a joke. As he approached the jerky shop to place some orders,
Thank you.
the shop owner greeted him with gratitude.
For what?
As Enkrid tilted his head in confusion, the shop owner bowed twice more. Through his hair, specks of white strands were visible.
Because I'm grateful. As the mother of a foolish son, how could I take Krona from the person who saved him? Take as much as you want.
Huh.
Enkrid was perplexed. He had merely fought to the best of his ability. He had risked his life, just struggling to survive. In his desperate fighting, he received gratitude from a mother who had raised her son alone.
Thank you. Without my son, I have no reason to live.
On the battlefield, the things that happened. Many people had been saved thanks to Enkrid, and they were all connected to the border guard.
Only pay half price for the armor.
If you're looking for a leather water bottle, this one's better.
Are your boots still in good condition? If you bring that platoon member over, I'll take their measurements and make everything custom.
I don't have much to give except flowers. Take this with you. How about an apple? I've gathered some dried fruits.
Would you like some charcoal?
For the past 3 months, the merchants in the market hadn't seen Enkrid. Now they were treating their hero. It was something Enkrid had never expected.
I feel oddly happy.
Kreis said from beside him, and Enkrid felt the same. Though he hadn't fought desperately just to save someone, he had also thought about protecting those around him. A new thought dawned on him. What is a knight?
A protector.
Someone who protects the smiles of their people and upholds their beliefs. For Enkrid, it was a surprisingly satisfying outing and a fulfilling day. 10 whistling daggers, and a wide leather armor lined with thin cloth on the inside so it wasn't scratchy. The armor was fine, quite satisfactory. Although it didn't have the spells of the previous armor, it should suffice for physical protection. It might be uncomfortable to wear in hot weather, but if necessary, what can you do? The armor had a grid of thin metal chains hammered flat and inserted between the layers of leather. It was heavy, but the defense seemed excellent.
It's my masterpiece.
The blacksmith had every right to say that. He offered it at half price, but the armor itself was expensive. The cost of repairing the leather and painstakingly making each thin chain added up. It took nearly a year to make just one suit of armor.
Use it well.
The blacksmith, with his ruddy face, gifted it to him. But Enkrid couldn't just take it, so Kreis paid for it. The blacksmith silently accepted the krona pouch. Along with the armor, he received 2 daggers to strap to his ankles, a guard sword for his back, and 8 throwing knives for his thighs and sides. He wore the whistling daggers crossed on his chest. He already knew from experience that this angle was convenient for drawing them. Since he might need a utility knife while traveling, he took one as well. Should he bring a short sword too? It could serve as a backup if his main sword broke. With all the things he was packing, it was quite a load. He also needed a thick blanket for sleeping outdoors, and perhaps a pot for cooking. Kreis could carry the pot, but there were still many other things to prepare. He considered bringing charcoal for warmth at night, thick cloth, wooden spoons and forks, and a thin copper-infused iron plate for cooking. A backpack would also be necessary for the journey, and it was already quite heavy. Perhaps the reason Enkrid survived, despite his lack of sword skills, was his thorough preparation. Some habits don't go away easily, especially when traveling with just 4 companions, each formidable in their own right. Frog, who often traveled alone, understood the dangers of the journey all too well, so Enkrid couldn't afford to slack on preparations. It gave him peace of mind.
Are you taking all that?
Luagern asked, perhaps in awe or jest, but Enkrid paid it no mind. Peace of mind was his priority.
Yes, it's a pity I can't bring more.
His equipment was thorough, including gauntlets and shin guards. He meticulously sharpened each knife and polished the blades with animal fat. The blades gleamed.
Are you trying to reflect sunlight during the day? That's sharp.
Enkrid responded casually to Frog, who commented while watching. It was almost like they were having a chat.
Why do I feel like my place is being taken?
Rem muttered nearby. Enkrid ignored it.
Why aren't you answering me?
Rem's tone grew petulant. This couldn't be left alone. If ignored further, Rem might cause trouble, so Enkrid spoke.
I did.
When?
With silence.
What is this crazy talk?
Rem's face twisted in a strange way. Enkrid calmly took in Rem's reaction and ignored it.
Tisk.
Rem let it slide as well. He knew he would lose in a verbal argument. It was something he had experienced many times. Whether on a mission or not, it was just everyday life. Enkrid did what he usually did. He woke up in the morning and threw himself into intense training, preparing for deployment in the evening. This included not only maintaining his equipment, but also gathering various tools. Frog was half exhausted by Enkrid's relentless dedication.
Is he just a tough guy?
Or perhaps a dull one. He did all this without hesitation. Training and preparations were no small tasks, no sign of doubt or suffering. Well, sometimes he seemed to struggle under the guise of practicing the isolation technique, but seeing the odd smile on his face afterward made one wonder.
Is he just a masochist?
Maybe so. Despite being told he couldn't become a knight, there was no sign of despair or frustration. After watching for 3 months, there was no falsehood in his actions. Thus, he was just a strange, very strange guy. Karuk. This piqued Frog's interest. His appearance was also exceptional, making him intriguing to watch. Where did such a person come from?
He's mine.
Luagern sat crouched in the shade on one side of the training ground, watching. The ferry company commander approached and said this, casting a shadow that slightly overlapped the shade.
Did I say anything?
Luagern responded indifferently.
Kia.
Esther, sitting alone in the opposite shade, bared her fangs. She often did that. Since it didn't concern him, Luagurney let it slide. For Frog, the important things were desire, interest, and stimulation. With that stimulation before him, she was in a good mood, enough not to kill someone who might hit her heart carelessly. Though, if they did hit her heart, she'd probably half-kill them. Between training sessions, Enkrid didn't neglect his duties.
You're going on an expedition? With 4 people, including Frog?
When he reported to the battalion commander, he was questioned briefly, but soon received approval.
That's unusual.
That was all that was added.
So, how do you feel about not being able to become a knight?
The battalion commander asked as Enkrid was leaving. Enkrid responded indifferently before saluting.
Yes, thank you for the gift.
Was there malice in his thoughtfulness? No, there wasn't. Even if there had been malice, it was still a good opportunity for him. Was it said that a dream was never fulfilled? For Enkrid, it wasn't a story that applied. He had come this far chasing an unfulfilled dream, merely piecing together a dream that had been torn and shredded.
Thank you.
Yes, I see.
After the dull conversation, Enkrid left, saluting as he went outside again. The ferry company commander followed closely behind. It seemed like they had been running into each other more often lately. Maybe he didn't have much to do. With such a thought, he looked at Enkrid.
Fallen for me, have you?
He made a comment like that. Enkrid turned away, denying it. He returned to focusing on his personal preparations.
Looks like you're excited to go out.
Rem taunted without reason.
If you're itching for a fight, shall we spar?
Enkrid skillfully deflected the provocation.
Sure.
They engaged in a refreshing bout, landing solid hits. If there was anything satisfying, it was seeing a different emotion on Rem's face, a sense of satisfaction. When Enkrid activated his heart of the beast and struck down with his sword, Rem skillfully deflected the blow with his foot. It was the first time Rem used a technique similar to the art of deflection.
Deflection? Why can't I use such techniques?
No.
That wasn't it. The result was a loss when the heart of the beast's power was released after a heavy axe strike. Afterward, Enkrid sparred with Auden and Ragna. When Jackson showed up again, they sparred as well.
We need more training.
Training sessions increased. Jackson readily assisted in training. They focused on honing visual acuity and reflexes, ultimately aiming to develop the sense of evasion.
We still have a long way to go.
The results were still insufficient, but it was all about repetition. The essence was this. Once his personal preparations were mostly complete, Enkrid plunged into intense training until the day before departure.
We have more equipment now, so we need to organize it properly.
Ragna uncharacteristically gave some advice. Enkrid found it worth listening to.
Indeed.
He increased his meditation time between training sessions. Luagurney sometimes wielded a whip or corrected stances when in the mood, but mostly observed. Enkrid paid no mind to it. He was busy steadily building upon what he had.
Basic skills.
The fundamentals of swordsmanship and training. These were rooted in the foundational techniques of the Northern heavy sword style and the isolation technique. This was all supported by a keen sense for the blade, opening the gate of sixth sense to glimpse a bit of the future. This didn't come into play alone. It required a focus point to back it up.
I'm not a genius.
Like a frog trapped in the well of today, striving to climb out to see the sky of tomorrow. Thus he struggled. Thus he crawled forward, inch by inch. Enkrid hadn't changed. He was unwavering. A wanderer chasing a faded dream, he just kept walking, sharpening his skills, fortifying his resolve, and sharpening again, mastering the rhythm, adding strength to the heavy sword style, becoming a bit more accustomed to the heart of the beast. Then, on the eve of their departure,
I hear the beast hordes have been causing a lot of trouble lately. Merchants used to travel in groups of 10, but now they won't go with fewer than 20. Is it okay to go out like this? Well, I guess we'll manage. Doesn't something feel off?
Frog, Finn, and Enkrid's faces were examined by Kreis as he awkwardly voiced his concern. It was during their usual sparring session after listening to Kreis' words. The opponent was Rem, and they stood at a distance. As Enkrid drew his sword and pointed it, Rem swung his axes, twisting his wrists. How many times had they sparred like this? They had faced off quite frequently recently.
Make my day more enjoyable today.
Rem seemed to have been sulking for some reason. This sparring session was partly to lift Rem's spirits. If that was the case, why didn't he just come along instead of staying behind and sulking? It was now mid-season, transitioning into summer. Enkrid felt the change in temperature. He sensed the subtle shift in the wind's direction. As the air changed in an instant, they both gauged the distance between them. In that moment, a split second, the gap opened. At that instant, all the lessons from the countless repetitions of today settled into Enkrid's body. Things he had learned over time, the lines connecting point to point, the circle drawn around himself, the sword's domain, the rhythm or tempo, known as the timing for attack, defense, and counter, the slight gestures of his opponent, the breath that showed a glimpse of the immediate future. Enkrid slightly lowered his hand. It was instinctual and necessary because he could see the future. The tip of the sword tilted slightly forward. The two axes halted in the sunlight. He could see the tip of Rem's nose. He could see his eyes. He could see the sweat running down his forehead. As Enkrid focused solely on facing his opponent, he found the most logical and quickest path. The point where their domains touched, the tempo and timing favorable to him. His foot lifted off the ground, catching the rhythm. The sword cut through the sunlight, descending from above. The axes moved as well. The person holding the axes moved as well. A faint, blurry figure appeared. It looked like a ghost or perhaps a specter to Enkrid. Regardless, the axes of the specter came flying. A vision of his neck being cut flashed before his eyes, but just before the vision became reality, Enkrid's sword fell from above. It was a lightning-fast slash, accelerating with the weight of the northern heavy sword style. Cut? Nothing. Neck? His neck was fine. The image of it being cut was just an illusion.
Well, you've learned how to make people serious, haven't you? You dodged it, didn't you?
Turning around, Enkrid saw a small cut on Rem's cheek. There was no cut on his hand, but he had made a mark. Just a scratch on the cheek, but still. A tingling sensation, akin to awe, spread through his body. It felt like the roar of a beast resonating from within. In hindsight, it was the first time. Neither Rem, Ragna, Auden, nor Jackson had ever been scratched by his sword.
That's right.
Luagarne, who had been watching, suddenly stood up, clapping her hands. The sound was dull, despite his smooth palms meeting, but her expression was very pleased.
Well, now so.
Enkrid struggled to find the words. It was a different experience, though he had experienced something similar before.
Mustached man.
The first time he faced him, when he was deeply absorbed in Mitch Hurrier, focusing on a single point. It was a moment of breaking through some sort of limit. Of course, now it is more intense than back then. He had learned more, he had acquired more skills. It's often said that you see as much as you know, and so he did, seeing just as much as he knew.
Just do that about 15 more times.
Rem said nonchalantly. Enkrid looked at him with a blank expression.
If you do that, your hand will touch the wall, and you'll be able to go over it.
There was something unresolved between them. Enkrid sensed it, but he was too busy reflecting on what had happened. One exchange. He had gained so much from it. He knew it instinctively.
Good job,
Enkrid said, turning away. He wanted to reflect and ponder. What was contained in that single sparring match, that one exchange of attacks and defenses?
Brother, you took a hit.
Came Auden's teasing voice from behind, directed at Rem.
Shall we have lunch with the Lord today, you crazy big guy?
Rem and Auden's playful bickering echoed behind him. Enkrid ignored it. These days, even if they fought, they stopped at a reasonable point. They hadn't exactly become closer, but they maintained a strange balance. How did I cut him? He wondered, marveling at the fact that he had left a scratch on Rem's cheek. He was more engrossed in analyzing the process than the fact itself. This wasn't his first experience like this, so he knew how to reflect and ponder. It was like a frog trapped in a well that jumps high enough to see outside. What could he gain from this? A frog that jumps high once can do it again. Outside the well, Enkrid wanted to face a new world. Despite leaving on a mission in 2 days, his focus remained unshaken. Apart from basic training, he kept pondering and pondering. He followed the saying, "You see as much as you know," and felt a sense of inadequacy.
Deep gratitude and quick recovery.
The foundation of the 5 swords was the correct sword technique. Was that enough? He had previously thought about using different weapons. Knights are said to be adept at handling 10 different weapons. But he couldn't do that. Being adept means understanding 10 from mastering one. That requires talent, which he didn't possess. So, what should he do?
If you can't learn 10 from mastering one,
What if he learned each one individually? People often say that repeating daily routines leads to progress, but what if there was a way to walk instead of crawl?
I must do it.
He murmured to himself. It was a matter of course. He had become so engrossed that he didn't even realize it was already evening. Even during meals or whatever he was doing, one part of his mind was always reflecting and pondering. The moment he scratched Rem's cheek, Enkrid felt not satisfaction but a burning desire. He looked ahead to the path he wanted to take. That was the result. Muttering to himself, Enkrid got up from his bed and moved. The lodging was not spacious. Everyone's eyes were on him. Enkrid stopped in front of the bed of Frog, who was preparing to sleep. Frog looked up at him from his lying position.
Do you know the correct sword technique?
The day of departure was tomorrow. The lamplight cast long shadows behind them. Everyone had already washed up in the bathroom. Finn was the last to return, water dripping from her wet hair. Esther was grooming her nails in Enkrid's spot, but she paused and looked up. The deep blue eyes of the panther stared directly at Enkrid's back.
It's a specialty.
Luagarn responded from his lying position.
Teach me.
Enkrid was eager to learn. He didn't wait for someone to offer to teach him. From his perspective, Frog was an excellent instructor. Aside from using the whip, she was skilled with other weapons as well. Special techniques, or the correct sword technique. He knew this from the occasional teachings and sparring they had. He needed guidance that was different from simply observing and mimicking from the sidelines. Ragnar's northern-style correct sword technique was excellent. The other swordsmanship techniques he shared weren't bad either, but Ragnar had also learned them by observing from the sidelines.
I only mimic what I've seen once or twice.
He would often say such things. The way a genius learns wasn't enough. What he felt, as always, was a thirst. There was something he could learn from Frog that he couldn't learn from the other platoon members. Rem? He didn't have a structured combat style. His fighting was in the realm of intuition and sixth sense. He had left a scratch on Rem's cheek during their sparring match. Underneath the thrill, Enkrid saw it, the appearance that seemed like a demon at that moment. Was that Rem's true nature, or was it an illusion created by his own mind and eyes? He didn't know, but if he had a wish,
to see it again.
He wanted to push Rem into such a situation again. That was his wish. He didn't immediately want to break through his limits and realize will. Enkrid wasn't like that. Years and days spent holding on to fragments of dreams. If he had learned anything, it was this: to take steps one at a time, even if crawling. Even if the steps were slow, moving forward, he could see, feel, and reach them. Having taken one step forward, he decided to set a small goal: to see the truth, whether a ghost or something else, in Rem's face. Ideally in the faces of Auden, Ragnar, and Jackson as well. Of course, Luagar nodded without hesitation. Bowing his head, Enkrid went to bed. Tomorrow was the day they were to head to the pioneer village as promised and carry out their mission. They had to set out on the journey. It wouldn't be good to carry fatigue, so they needed to sleep early.
By the way, I'm suddenly realizing, do you know that if a person is overly indifferent, it can make them seem crazy?
Rem muttered from his bed. Enkrid didn't respond. Engaging would lead to a long conversation. Fortunately, Rem fell silent as well. It was just an idle observation.
Haha, brother. May the Lord's grace be with you, and please keep that sanity intact.
It felt like he was being called a crazy bastard, but a prayer was a prayer, and a blessing was a blessing. The others remained silent. The night passed. The next day arrived. Enkrid set out on the road with a calm demeanor. They left the city. Behind him were Luagarne and Kreis, and in front of him was Finn. In his arms was Esther, clinging tightly with her claws digging into his chest, refusing to be let down. He had to bring her along.
Let's go.
Led by Finn, the group followed the road and soon encountered ghouls.
Already?
It was an early encounter. For a monster sighting, it was quite close to the city. Of course, that wasn't the problem. There were 2 ghouls, gray-skinned monsters that craved human flesh and blood. Enkrid drew his sword. With the same calmness as when he set out that morning, he swung his blade. Slice, crunch. The correct sword technique was based on strength. With one strike, he beheaded one and split its skull. Black blood and grayish brain matter splattered on the ground. A few drops of ghoul blood splashed onto Enkrid's body.
The foundation of the correct sword technique is patience.
Luagarn said from behind. The journey was also a path of training and discipline. It was the beginning of a lesson, A scab had formed on his cheek. As he touched it, Rem recalled the first day he saw Enkrid, or rather, the first day he teased him.
Want to spar? With me?
He thought Enkrid was something else. The guy who had come in as a squad leader swung his sword desperately every day and then wanted to spar. He looked like a third-rate fighter, or maybe second-rate in some aspects. By the standards of the soldier ranking system, he was somewhere between a lower and middle rank. He was a man with no talent.
I thought there might be something to learn.
When Enkrid first faced him, what weapon was he using? He usually used whatever he could get his hands on, but that time it was a sword. He wielded 2 swords, one in each hand, just like when he used to wield axes. It was an easy fight. Tripping over his own feet, Enkrid rolled on the ground. He fell awkwardly, getting a scratch on his face. Some of it was intentional.
Where did they find this pretty boy and make him a squad leader?
He wondered what kind of reaction he would get if Enkrid's face got damaged. He was curious about Enkrid's background. Was he a noble, or perhaps someone's relative? Did he have connections in the military? There was nothing of the sort. Even with a scratch on his face, Enkrid didn't tend to his wound but got up and said,
"Can we do it again?"
Again?
Enkrid nodded. Is he half crazy? Honestly, Rem had never met anyone more reckless than himself. He beat him, left knife marks on his neck to scare him, and even cut his forehead to make him bleed. Blood flowing from the forehead covering the area around the eyes was a unique fear not known to those who haven't experienced it, seeing the world through a red tint. Even so, the new squad leader didn't back down. Despite his face being covered in blood, looking almost like a blood ghoul.
I have a question. What are you going to do if you die from this?
This was during their sparring. Rem was relaxed, but Enkrid was not. The madman who had been attacking relentlessly throughout the changing seasons caught his breath and replied,
"Then that would be the end of it."
Is this guy completely insane? That's the end. It can't just end like that.
You're in bad shape,
Rem said, and that day he taught him the heart of the beast. If he was ready to face death, then maybe, just maybe, he would gain something. It was futile. He didn't have the temperament to learn the heart of the beast. If pushed, he would close his eyes, unable to find the courage. Even when he opened his eyes, he couldn't see clearly. His body froze at dangerous moments.
Truly talentless,
Rem found himself saying. Still, the position of squad leader, which had frequently changed hands, did not change. He survived, steadfastly. Was sparring with him enjoyable? Well, it was just something to do. He wasn't some great person in Rem's life. Rem also liked women, so there weren't any strange feelings. It was just that watching him felt moderately pleasant, like bright sunshine, or watching animals running across a dry meadow. It was just nice to see. He'll die like that, he thought. Seeing him struggling on the battlefield, Rem found himself lending a hand. At least he didn't want to see him die right in front of him. The sparring continued. Time passed.
How did you do that?
Enkrid had adopted the heart of the beast technique. He began to change after that day. His skills improved, sometimes noticeably, almost abruptly. Other times, progress was so slow it seemed doubtful. Within this flow, did Enkrid change? No, he remained the same, still, just as he was at the beginning.
Sparring?
His words had become shorter since they first met. He had also become adept at turning people's words against them. Nevertheless, the sparring continued. He had a scratch on his cheek, a scab had formed. Ha-ha, Enkrid? That squad leader? Rem felt he had to show his true skills. He almost revealed techniques he had kept hidden. No, this wasn't right. It was a personal desire, but it wasn't time yet. Rem needed to continue playing above Enkrid. He wanted to keep having fun for a bit longer. If it wasn't like this, it wouldn't be enough. If he were caught up to, if he had to fight seriously, it wouldn't be fun. To tease and spar, he couldn't fall behind. Not even for a moment should he be caught up to. The scratch on his cheek, in that moment, even if it was just by a fraction. He had been caught up to. It didn't sit well with him. It made him anxious. Moreover, the question Kreis had posed on the battlefield still lingered in his mind.
Can you handle a knight?
If they come at me, I can kill them.
He answered seriously, because the question was serious. There was a strange intensity he sensed even from this big-eyed guy. An intriguing guy. That unusually clever fellow nodded. It meant he understood, even with a vague explanation. He could kill, but if he worried about what came next, the odds were about 50-50. Honestly, the chance of winning might be about 3 to 4 out of 10. After that question, Kreis seemed to decide to avoid direct confrontation with the enemy's forces. The battlefield had flowed that way, hadn't it? Most likely. It slightly bruised his pride.
Lazy bum with a short appetite.
That was why he didn't join the others. There was something to be done here. Maybe that idiot was similar to him. Ragnar lifted his head slightly at Rem's words. He was half leaning against the wall of the quarters.
Want to put half your life on the line and spar?
He spoke in his usual playful tone, but there was seriousness in it.
Let's do it.
Ragnar stood up. The lazy one had changed too. Despite Enkrid's absence, there was something like a spark in his eyes. Rem headed to the training ground without a hint of a smile.
Big guy, you can come along too.
On the way, he called Odin as well.
Haha, the Lord calls.
Odin stood up with a smile. They left the sly alley cat alone. After all, he wasn't particularly suited for frontal combat.
If needed, he'll come.
That guy wouldn't come just because he was called. More importantly, he was truly a cunning one. Rem himself was a former hunter. That guy was like a relentless night hunter or a human hunter. On one side of the training ground, Rem picked up an axe. With a ting, he clashed the two axe blades together, taking his stance.
Don't hold a grudge if you die.
Ragnar, who stood opposite him, said,
Look who's talking.
Soon they began to move. All the soldiers who had been training around them stopped to watch. Bang! Thud! Crack! The heavy sounds of the clashes echoed. It was a sparring match where they took turns, and the intensity made everyone gasp in awe.
I want to join in too.
The ferry company commander interjected.
You're ready to put half your life on the line?
Rem questioned, to which the commander smiled and drew her sword. Blades resembling leaves reflected the light. It was a declaration of intent. She showed that her skills were on par with theirs. They fit in. Without needing to say it, they knew they were all of the same mind. When you share swords and exchange punches, things become clear.
Not yet.
Not really, not yet. Even if it felt like the mischievous heart of an 8-year-old wanting to maintain a lead over Enkrid. They had decided to be present in the moment. Fighting with half a life at stake was the start of change and acceleration. All four were recognized as geniuses. They were all refining their skills. But it wasn't just about refining. Rem honed Ragnar honed Rem, and Odin joined in, with Jackson occasionally jumping in. The ferry company commander joined them in rotation. Whenever things got too serious, the rest would jump in to balance and lighten the mood. They had been honing their talents, and there was more and more to show Enkrid when he returned. Meanwhile, Enkrid was traveling a path rougher than he had expected. Karg. A horde of beasts appeared one after another. Well, it was somewhat enjoyable. For Enkrid, it was both an opportunity for training and a testing ground.